Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Gonzalez, members of the task force, we have submitted the formal statement for the record, and I'm going to summarize briefly what our statement says. I'm here today to present the findings on our Florida 13 review based on the testing we conducted on iVotronic voting machines used in the 2006 general election in the Sarasota County, Florida. I'd like to begin by thanking the task force for its overall support of our efforts and specifically for the assistance provided in obtaining the resources of the House Recording Studio, which were critical in successfully completing our tests. At the October 2nd, 2007 meeting of the task force, we proposed and you asked us to proceed with 3 tests: firmware verification test, ballot test, and calibration test, in order to obtain increased assurance that the iVotronic voting machines did not contribute to the large undervote observed in the 2006 elections in Sarasota County. To conduct the 3 tests, we developed test protocols and detailed test procedures. We met with officials from Sarasota County Supervisor of Elections and the Florida Department of State and Florida Division of Elections in order to make necessary arrangements to obtain access to the voting machines and to schedule and conduct the tests. Thanks to everyone's cooperation and help, we have been able to successfully complete our testing during November 26th through December 4th, 2007 in Sarasota County's voting equipment facility in Sarasota, Florida. Our tests on the randomly selected iVotronic machines in Sarasota County did not identify any problems that would indicate that the machines were responsible for the undervote in the Florida 13 race in the 2006 general election. In our firmware verification test, we extracted the firmware from a random sample of 115 iVotronics and found that in each case, the firmware extracted from the machines matched the firmware that was escrowed and certified by Florida Division of Elections. The statistical approach that we used in selecting these machines enables us to say with 99% confidence level that no more than 60 of the 1,499 iVotronics that were used in 2006 election could have been running a different version of software. Consequently, we were able to place more confidence in the tests that we conducted on a smaller number of machines, both we conducted as well as the ones that were conducted by others in the past, results of which have indicated that the iVotronics did not cause the undervote. Prior to the Sarasota testing on November 19, 2007, we had visited the manufacturer of the voting machine, ES&S, in their Rockford, Illinois facility and observed as they rebuilt the firmware from source code that was previously held in escrow by Florida Division of Elections. The software that was rebuilt from that source code, we observed that that software matches the firmware that was held in escrow and that was certified by Florida Division of Elections. This provides further confidence in the prior source code reviews that were conducted by a team from Florida State University and by us. For the ballot testing, we cast predefined test ballots on 10 iVotronic machines and confirmed that each ballot was displayed and recorded accurately. The test ballots represented 112 ways a voter may have interacted with the iVotronic to cast a ballot in the Florida 13 race. These test ballots were cast on 9 machines that were configured as election day machines and repeated on 1 machine configured as an early voting machine. Finally, we conducted a calibration testing by miscalibrating 2 of the iVotronics and casting some of the test ballots on them. Our tests involving 10 different miscalibration patterns and capturing a total of 39 votes on the 2 machines found that although the machines became more difficult to use with miscalibration, they displayed the selections that were displayed on the screen for the Florida 13 race were the same ones that appeared on the review screen and then recorded when the ballots were cast. Based on the testings that we have conducted, we obtained increased assurance that the iVotronic voting machines used in Sarasota County's 2006 general election did not contribute to the large undervote in the Florida 13 contest. Although the test results cannot be used to provide absolute assurance, we believe that these test results, combined with the other reviews that have been conducted by State of Florida, us, and others, have significantly reduced the possibility that the iVotronic machines were the cause of the undervote. At this point, we believe that adequate testing has been performed on the voting machine software to reach this conclusion, and we do not recommend further testing in this area. Given the complex interaction of people, process, and technology that must effectively work together to achieve a successful election, We acknowledge the possibility that the large undervote in the Florida 13 race could have been caused by factors such as voters who intentionally undervoted, or voters who may not have properly cast their ballots on the iVotronic machine, potentially because of issues relating to interaction between the voters and the ballot. Mr. Chairman, this concludes a summary of my written statement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you or other members of the task force may have at this time. Thank you.
The chair is going to recognize himself for some preliminary questions and then, of course, turn it over to my colleagues. But Dr. Barkakati, I have a couple of questions. First of all, that you were specifically charged with simply looking as to whether the electronic machines malfunctioned and may have been the culprit in the undervote. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
we did not ask you to look into ballot design.
No, we did not look at the ballot design.
And we did not ask you to go and look into either voter apathy or just where they were totally turned off by the tenor of the campaign and decided to intentionally or deliberately not vote in Florida 13. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
In conducting your testing and the protocols, because, of course, again, for just general information, you came before the task force with your intended protocols as to how you were going to conduct your testing. And in arriving at that protocol, did you entertain suggestions, recommendations, basic input from all the parties, including the contestant, the contestee, Florida election officials, Florida State University personnel that conducted some previous testing and their experts, as well as suggestions and recommendations or observations from the manufacturer of the voting machine?
Yes, sir. We did entertain all of those inputs in deciding the test protocols and procedures.
Okay. Now, there are many individuals that are interested in this for a lot of reasons because it goes beyond this particular Florida 13 contested election. And as much as I'd like to just contain everything to the question at hand, and which will basically form the basis for everything that we do, we're not going to expand it. However, we do have individuals out there that have expressed great interest, and I have one individual who emailed some information to my office this morning, and so I do want to go ahead and ask some of the questions that that he has actually posed. And one would be, it's the personalized electronic ballots, or PEB cards, used to activate each voter's ballot for the DRE, the electronic voting machine, contains firmware separate from the firmware for the DRE itself. And this individual believes that that could have been a culprit. That could have been giving you some insight as to whether the machines malfunctioned, outside of that which you may have tested specifically. How would you address this individual's concern regarding the PEB card, which you cover extensively in your final report?
Sir, the PEB, personalized electronic ballot, it does have a little bit of a computing capability to transmit back and forth information with the iVotronic machine using infrared communication mechanism. However, besides that, it's primarily a memory device to hold data. And it holds initially the ballot definitions that are going to be used to display the ballots on the screen. However, when you open the machine, you copy all of those into the iVotronic, and then from that point on, the PEB is only an activator device. It can activate to get started. So there were some allegations that maybe the PEB was displaying different ballot to different people. However, it only is copied once, and then the same ballot display is used over and over again. And we have seen that every machine that was used in all the 157 precincts had votes cast on the Florida 13 race. So we could not have had a situation where it was selectively not displaying ballot. I mean, we have checked into that part, that the PEB could not have been the cause of the problem, including the fact that the PEB is not the one that does the primary of all the calculations or displaying of the ballot. It's all done in the firmware that's inside the iVotronic machine itself. As I said, the PEB does have a small capability to send things back and forth, and that's all to the extent it does some work. So what I'm saying is that we looked at the whole situation of if the PEB could be a cause, both us as well as the source code review team that looked at the same scenarios, and we concluded that it could not be the reason for the undervote, essentially.
All right. Now, my second question, again taken from this particular individual, and I'm going to read specifically from the email. It is conceivable that, and even likely that, were there bugs in the user interface in the Sarasota machines, such as intermittent smooth and filter problems or other anomalies, these, A, could have occurred regardless of whether the software, firmware, were identical, and B, would not have been uncovered without greater volume testing with actual use of the interface, especially in conditions resembling election day use. Can you respond?
Yes, sir. We actually, as you might recall, there was some mention that the smoothing filter was one of those letters that came from, I think, ESNS to the county saying that we have a smoothing filter that we want to change, and it'll help improve performance of the machine in terms of responsiveness. Now, the source code review team in Florida State University, they said they didn't find the smoothing filter. However, when we were looking at it, because we already knew that that was an issue coming up, we could find certain elements that I was able to confirm with the manufacturer that constituted what they were calling smoothing filter. It essentially is very simple to explain. It's basically the machine doesn't want to give you, as soon as you touch, it doesn't want to assume that you have touched it yet. It records the point, and then it waits a little bit, like a 200 millisecond or so, and then tries to get another data point to see that both are close enough. And if they're not close enough, then they assume that, well, maybe it's a spurious thing, then I would ignore it. That's the logic built in. And that logic is what was called smoothing filter. Now, how close the two touches have to be is the threshold that they can play with to get it to be like more sensitive, less sensitive kind of thing. If it's like wide, as you can imagine, if the threshold is wide, it doesn't matter. If another touch is slightly further off, it will assume them to be the same. Whereas if you tighten them up, it takes longer because the touch screens do have some noisy, data going back and forth. So basically the bottom line was the smoothing filter was not more of a mystery after that. I could understand what it was, and we figured it out. And the proposal they had made was simply to widen the threshold to make it more responsive. Now, regardless of all of that, we were looking at the source code that handles the display and the recording of the vote. That is not going to be affected at all by, other than the machine's response might be slow. In other words, like you might take a little time to get the mark to show up, but the machine isn't going to suddenly misbehave because it's slightly slower in response. And that actually almost explains the other element which we might have read, like non-deterministic behavior. Well, because the touch screen, depending on the time, some other conditions, it may, have other spurious things going on whereby that filter that I talked about, the closeness of two touches, maybe it's not being met. And if it's not being met, that condition is not met, then the system waits a little bit longer to get another touch, So it looks like is it waiting for me to get, accept my input? That's what the user would feel like. But bottom line of all of that is, regardless of all of that, that it isn't going to affect anywhere at all in terms of what selection is displayed to the user and what selection is recorded. So from that, we are concluding that essentially, if the machine is displaying a selection, that will be the one displayed in the review screen and recorded when you press the vote button. And that is the bottom line that we're going after in the technological study. So I guess it's a very long way of explaining, but I think we did understand. We looked into all of that when you understood what it was, smoothing filter was, and what the company was intending to do when they had sent that letter, and what its effect might have been. And regardless of all of that, we were able to confirm sort of like the same thing that the source code review team from Florida State University had said. It wasn't going to affect the vote display and recording of the machine.
Thank you very much, Dr.